Great players don't appear out of nowhere. The trajectory was there. In the spin rate, the prospect report, the contract structure, long before the world noticed. We find that trajectory every morning, pull the 3 stories that are actually moving the game, and break down what they mean before the day gets away. This is Streak Plot Baseball. Let's get into it. The St. Louis Cardinals are not in a championship window right now, but they're not fully rebuilding either. They're a team with over $129 million of luxury tax space, which means they have the financial flexibility to make moves if the right opportunity comes along. And right now, they're getting a gift from one of their young starting pitchers. The question is how long that gift lasts, and whether it actually means what it looks like on the surface. Michael McGreevy is 24 years old. He's in his first real stretch of MLB starting duty, and he's sitting on a 2.40 ERA through 56 innings. For a team that's been trying to identify its next wave of starting pitching, that number feels like a revelation. Here's the honest truth, though. The underlying numbers are telling a very different story, and this is exactly the kind of gap that matters more than fans realize. McGreevy's expected ERA, which measures the quality of contact he's actually been allowing, independent of where the ball happens to fall, sits at 5.85. That's a 3.45 run gap. To put that in perspective, his career average gap between his actual ERA and his expected ERA is about minus 0.92, meaning he's historically beaten his expected number by a little under a run. That's a legitimate skill, by the way. Some pitchers genuinely get weaker contact than the raw numbers project, and McGreevy has shown that tendency throughout his career. But 3.45 runs below his expected ERA isn't a skill, that's luck. And luck in baseball has a very reliable habit of correcting itself. Here's what the contact quality is actually showing. Hitters are making hard contact against McGreevy at a 41% rate. His barrel rate against, which measures the most damaging type of contact, the balls hit at the perfect combination of angle and speed, is sitting above 10%. That's elevated. His fastball velocity is also down about 1.6 miles per hour from last season, sitting at 91.4 miles per hour. For a pitcher whose arsenal doesn't miss a ton of bats, 5.9 strikeouts per 9 innings is below league average, losing velocity while giving up hard contact is not a sustainable combination. He's been able to mask it so far because of strand rate, sequence, a little fortune with balls in play. None of those things hold up over a full season. Baseball history is littered with young starters who posted beautiful April and May ERAs and then watched them balloon in July and August when the contact quality caught up with them. Now here's what makes McGreevy genuinely interesting despite all of that. He has real control. His walk rate is excellent, he doesn't beat himself, and he doesn't make obvious mistakes. Those are real pitcher qualities. If he's able to add some deception, improve his velo, or develop a better secondary offering, there's a foundation here worth building on. He's not just a replacement-level arm getting lucky. But right now, the 2.40 ERA is not real, and Cardinals fans deserve to know that. The Cardinals organization can absorb the cost of finding out. With that much luxury tax space, they're not handcuffed by McGreevy's performance one way or the other. If he's actually developing into something, great. If the regression comes, and the numbers strongly suggest it will, they have the room to address it. For McGreevy himself, this is a contract year at the big league minimum, and the window to capitalize on this ERA before the regression arrives is closing. That's not a knock on him, it's just the math. The underlying contact quality is already trending toward ERA correction. By August, the ERA will likely look much closer to the expected number, and the sell-high window will have closed. The one takeaway here is this. Michael McGreevy's ERA looks like a breakout, but the contact he's giving up tells a different story. He's a young pitcher with real tools, but the 2.40 ERA is not what he actually is right now. Watch for that number to climb as the season moves into summer, and watch whether the Cardinals start to address their rotation before it does. The Arizona Diamondbacks came into this season as one of the most interesting teams in the National League West, with legitimate playoff ambitions sitting near 47% odds right now. They built their rotation around real arms, and Corbin Burnes was supposed to be the centerpiece of it. Now he's headed for Tommy John surgery, and the Diamondbacks are facing a kind of hole in their rotation that you can't plug with a phone call to the bullpen. Let me start with what this means before I tell you exactly what happened. When a true number one starter goes down with Tommy John surgery, the recovery timeline stretches well beyond this season. We're talking about a 12 to 18 month process typically, sometimes longer depending on how the rehab goes. Burns is not coming back this year. He is likely not pitching meaningful baseball until sometime in 2027. For a team with playoff ambitions right now, that's not a setback. That's a fundamental change to the equation. Burns is on the 60-day IL, which is the most serious designation available. And it's important to understand what Tommy John surgery means in modern baseball. The UCL, the ligament that connects the forearm to the upper arm on the inside of the elbow, is what keeps a pitcher's arm stable during the throwing motion. When it tears and requires reconstruction, you don't come back in a few weeks or even a few months. You rebuild, you rehab, you hope. Some pitchers come back throwing better than they did before. Some never quite get back to where they were. There's no guarantee with any of it. What makes this particularly layered for Arizona is that Burns' durability was already something the organization was monitoring. Over his 8-year career, he's had 4 seasons where his innings fell significantly below the workload you'd want from a frontline starter. The Diamondbacks knew they were signing a tremendous talent who came with some health uncertainty. They took that bet. Now they're on the wrong side of it, at least for this year. So what happens now? The immediate answer is that the bullpen absorbs innings, a swingman or two gets stretched, and Arizona tries to manage a much thinner rotation through a playoff push. None of that is a long-term solution. It's triage. The more interesting answer, the one worth paying attention to, is a name most Diamondbacks fans haven't heard much yet. Daniel Egan. Egan is currently pitching at Double-A, and he's ranked as one of the top 10 prospects in the Arizona system. He's 22 years old, throws a fastball that sits in the 93 to 95 mile per hour range with natural downhill plane, and scouts project him as a legitimate starting pitcher with real upside. His projected arrival in the big leagues under normal organizational development timelines was set for 2027. That's the plan when everything is healthy and stable. But plans change when your number one starter needs Tommy John surgery. The Diamondbacks now have a very real decision to make about Egan's timeline. Do they keep him on a developmental pace at Double-A and resist the temptation to rush him? Or does the rotation hole they're now looking at over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and honestly, for the rest of 2026, push them toward an accelerated call-up? This is where the tension lives. The organization knows that pushing a Double-A pitcher before he's truly ready rarely ends well. The jump from Double-A to the big leagues is the hardest jump in the sport, and doing it when you're on the clock to fill a playoff rotation is harder still. At the same time, the need is genuine, and sometimes a young arm gets an early chance, rises to it, and the whole trajectory of a career changes. Egan's command grades as a work in progress, which is normal for a pitcher his age at Double-A. The raw stuff is there. The question is whether he can consistently throw quality pitches in big league counts against big league hitters who will immediately attack any hesitation in his delivery. That's the test that no minor league experience fully prepares you for. Here's your takeaway for where this stands right now. Corbin Burns is done for the year and possibly facing a lengthy return into 2027. The Diamondbacks are a playoff contender who just lost their best starter. And a young Double-A pitcher named Daniel Egan just got pushed to the front of a conversation that wasn't supposed to happen for another year. Watch whether Arizona accelerates his timeline over the next month, because the next 6 weeks of decisions about their rotation will shape what kind of playoff run, if any, is actually possible for this team in 2026. The Houston Astros are a team trying to stay in the AL West playoff race, sitting at roughly 18% playoff odds right now. And one of the biggest questions hanging over their season is whether the guy they're paying $17 million a year can actually be the pitcher they need him to be. Lance McCullers Jr. is in the final year of his contract, and the story unfolding this season is not a simple one. It's not a bad year. It's not an injury flare-up. It's something more complicated, and honestly, more important than a single number in the standings column. Here's a question every Astros fan should be sitting with right now. Is Lance McCullers still the pitcher you think he is? Because the ERA says one thing, and the underlying reality says something a little different, and the gap between them matters. McCullers is carrying a 6.86 ERA through about 39 innings. That's a rough number, no question. But here's where it gets interesting. His expected ERA, which is a metric that strips out luck and looks at the actual quality of contact he's giving up, sits at 4.39. That's a meaningful gap. What that means in plain terms is that McCullers has been giving up harder contact than his ERA fully captures right now. Some of those runs aren't showing up yet, which means the truth probably lies somewhere between the ugly ERA and the cleaner expected number. Neither one tells the whole story. Together, they tell you he's a pitcher in genuine trouble, but not necessarily a lost cause. What does concern me, and what should concern Astros fans, is the home run rate. He's allowed 7 home runs in 39 innings, and his career average for home runs allowed per 9 innings was already creeping upward before this season. It's not a new trend. Over the arc of his career, McCullers has slowly become more hittable in the air. That pattern has been building for years, and this season, it's at its most pronounced. Now, part of that may be the health picture. McCullers is an 11-year veteran who has spent significant chunks of his career on the injured list. He's on pace for well under his career average in innings pitched this season, which tells you his workload is being carefully managed. That's not unusual for him, but it also means the Astros aren't getting the full version of their investment even when he's out there. And that investment is real. $17 million AAV is not a back of the rotation salary. That's a frontline starter contract. The Astros have barely $3 million of luxury tax breathing room right now, which means every dollar committed to McCullers is money that's not going anywhere else on the roster. When a $17 million pitcher posts a 0.3 WAR through the first 2 months of the season, and WAR is essentially a single number measure of how much value a player is adding above a replacement level option, that's a contract that isn't paying off. But here's the thing about McCullers that makes this worth watching rather than just writing off. He's been here before. He's had the health scares, the inconsistent stretches, the seasons that looked sideways early. And he's also been one of the more uniquely talented pitchers in the game when he's right. The curveball, the stuff when it's working, there's still something real there underneath the numbers. The real story is whether this season is the beginning of a permanent decline or a bumpy stretch for a veteran trying to find his footing. The HR9 trend over multiple years is the part that keeps me from being overly optimistic. That's not one bad start, that's a pattern. This is the final year of the deal. When it's over, McCullers will hit free agency in a market that's going to look at this season very carefully. If he rights the ship and posts a strong second half, he resets his value. If this trend continues, the conversation changes significantly for him and for Houston. Here's your one takeaway to bring to a friend. McCullers is pitching worse than you think he is, but also slightly better than that 6.86 ERA looks on the surface. The problem underneath, giving up too much hard contact, too many home runs, not enough innings, has been building for a few years now. The Astros need him. He needs a turnaround. And the second half of this season is going to tell us a lot about what kind of pitcher Lance McCullers Jr. still is. That's the read on the day. The game moves fast. The data moves faster. Come back tomorrow and we'll be ahead of it again. This is Streak Blot Baseball, where greatness is never random.